Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And we've reached another milestone. This is actually our 500th podcast episode. So we've come so far since our first episode back in November 2018. I really appreciate all your continued support over the last 6 years. And obviously, I hope you stay with us for another 6 years to hopefully surpass our 1,000th episode. So I'll bring you another distinguished guest that most of you listeners to this podcast will know. Rob McEwen, who's the chairman and chief owner of McEwen Mining, who are an exploration, development and production mining company that mine and produces gold and silver in jurisdictions such as the US, Canada, Mexico and Argentina. Rob is a prominent figure in the mining industry, known for his innovative leadership and entrepreneurial approach. He was the former CEO of Goldcorp, taking the company from a market capitalization of $50 million to over $8 billion. Rob has won numerous awards and achievements, including the Order of Canada back in 2007 and inducted to the Mining Hall of Fame in 2017. He's on the podcast to share his journey, the ups and downs of our mining industry, what we can hopefully learn from that, the history of McEwen Mining, and what they've been doing more recently, and obviously looking at the outlook of our industry, and obviously a lot more. Rob, thank you for your time and welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Rob. Thank you for that generous introduction.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your time as well. And I wondered if you could just obviously start off, and obviously a lot of our audience will know you, but for those that are listening around the world, I just wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about your career. Obviously, you've been in the industry for a very long time now. I just wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about your career, how you got into the mining industry, and how your obviously career has grown obviously successfully over a number of decades.
Well, I'd be happy to. I guess I have to go back quite a bit in time. My father was in the investment industry, and in the mid-60s, he started putting his clients into gold bullion and gold mining shares from companies around the world. And so that was always a conversation at the dining room table, the role of gold and the leverage that gold shares offered. I followed him into the investment industry, focusing on the natural resource sector. And during that time, I met a number of people, prospectors and promoters and operators. And I noted that they kept making discoveries. And I thought, we haven't exhausted all the discoveries in the world. And I noticed on some of these discoveries, financial independence was a result of some of these discoveries. And I thought, well, there's a jet stream up there. And I left the investment industry and jumped into the mining industry by taking over 2 mining companies and focused on exploration. And Mother Nature, fortunately, was kind enough to allow us to make a discovery in northern Canada, which was the background behind Goldcorp. And we pushed that very hard, and it was a wonderful ride. And then I decided, well, as you said, we'd grown to a good size, 8 billion, and I thought, how am I going to double or triple or 10x Goldcorp from that size? And I said, well, that's probably unlikely. So I stepped away from that when we had 400 million in cash and gold bullion and no debt, and we were one of the lowest cost gold producers in the world. And I said, well, this is a good time to step away and let's see if we can do it again. So I bought into a number of junior mining companies, and in 2012 put 2 of them together to form McEwen Mining. So that's how I found myself in the mining industry, and I'm looking for more discoveries. And I think we have a very large copper project that is the equivalent or bigger than what Goldcorp became.
Okay. Before we start speaking about McEwen Mining, see, you, like I mentioned, you've been in the mining industry for a long time, and obviously you must have seen lots of ups and downs. What were some of the most challenging moments, I suppose, earlier on in your career, that our listeners, which our listeners are people from the mining industry, not necessarily investors? What challenges did you have to overcome that our listeners could potentially learn from, with maybe some of the mistakes or things that you could have done better as you grew Goldcorp to what it was before you obviously left?
Well, before I entered the mining industry, as I said, I was in the financial industry. I was an analyst, a portfolio manager, and I'd have to say, although I followed the mining industry, I probably underestimated the complexity of the industry. Because once I stepped into the mining industry, when I took over several mining companies, I noticed there was a very different way of dealing with problems. In the financial industry, if you have a problem and you don't particularly like the situation you're in, you have the ability to sell and get away from it. But in the mining industry, for me, it felt like I just stepped into a vat of quick drying cement. And so I couldn't deal with the problems as quickly as I'd been able to deal with them in the investment industry. And along the way, I looked at the industry and I questioned why certain procedures were done and certain behavior. And every time I asked why, I wasn't getting the answer. Why are we doing it this way? And when I got an answer that said, we've always done it this way, that was like me being a bull in a field and seeing a red flag. Whenever anyone said that, I'd charge at it. And so there are all sorts of alternatives. Why aren't we looking at alternatives? One of those situations, we had a union at one of our mines, the United Steelworkers of America. Our costs were high. It seemed very cumbersome trying to deal with the union at times. So I thought, well, the contract was coming up for renewal, and we should rewrite what is called the collective bargaining agreement. So we ripped up the existing one that's had evolved over about 30 years and put right at the front, we're in business to make money, and if we make money, there's money to share. If we don't make money, there's nothing to share. And I wanted more flexibility with respect to training, with respect to jobs. The union didn't like it. They went out on strike. There was a labor stoppage, and that stoppage lasted for 46 months. And during that time, every time we went back to the table, I offered less than what I'd offered earlier. The union found that a little perplexing. Normally, management's supposed to be increasing, and they're supposed to be maybe coming down. Well, at one point, I received a letter in the mail. It wasn't in the mail, it came by fax at the time. And I had just arranged for a bought deal. And the letter said, if you want blood, we'll give you blood. We're not leaving. And it said, remember the giant Yellowknife mine, which was a mine in northern Canada, where members of the same union had planted a bomb at the bottom of the mine, and it had killed 9 people. So there was a death threat. I put a bounty on the heads of the writers. They were unknown. The letter hadn't been signed, but they had a deadline. and I hired a group of ex-undercover police that set up a system of moles. And in the union, I put a $35,000 reward on the heads of the people who would have written the letter. We set up confidential hotlines, and money would go straight into the bank account, whoever gave us information to lead to the arrest of the people that were the authors of the letter. It's my home. The basement windows and the first floor windows were replaced with bulletproof glass. On 2 occasions, 10 to 15 man SWAT teams showed up at my home because of this threat. So that would have been, it added an interesting element and challenge to my time in the mining industry. At the end of the day, the union chose to no longer represent the workers and decertified and left the mine. I think it was the first time in the history of the United Steelworkers they walked away from any mine in North America. And we went from producing 50,000 ounces a year at a cost of $360 an ounce to producing 500,000 ounces a year at a cost of $60 an ounce. So the outcome was quite favorable, and we didn't have a union. So another occasion is getting guidance from operations and then missing guidance over several years, missing on delivering the number of ounces we said we were going to produce, and missing on delivering it at a certain cost. And that went on for several years, and I'd say that was probably the hardest for all of our shareholders, including myself as the largest shareholder. I have $225 million invested in the company McEwen Mining and our subsidiary McEwen Copper, and have my maximum salary in any 1 year since for well over 15 years has been no more than $1 a year. I've watched our share price as a result of missing guidance, and anyone in the market knows that if you miss guidance, it is very quick and very severe, particularly if it's sustained missing of guidance. Our market cap lost hundreds of millions of dollars over a 3-year period, which should never have happened. But that was due to inappropriate people being in roles where they couldn't deliver. So I would say those were the 2 biggest challenges. During that period, it was pretty merciless, the way the phone calls coming in from very disappointed and angry shareholders of how could we have missed guidance to the degree we did. I'm glad to say we've turned the corner and those operations have recovered, and we have some other exciting projects. But those 2 periods, I would say, the first was difficult for my family, and the second was very difficult for my shareholders and myself.
I would like to welcome our sponsor, Hawcroft. Founded in 1992, they provide property risk management services to the mining and other industries, using their knowledge, perception, and expertise to offer true foresight across all aspects of mining and infrastructure. Their insurance risks surveys are recognized as the industry standard, as their reports are comprehensive, ensuring underwriters are well informed of risks surrounding your operation and quality control of those risks. Working with some of the biggest mining companies in our industry and across 600 sites, Hawcroft offer insurance risk surveys, construction risk reviews, asset critical and specialty assessments for a variety of mining, processing, smelting, materials handling, power, refining, port and rail operations. So if you're looking for a premium bespoke property risk management and risk engineering service, then contact Horcroft today or visit their website at www.horcroft.com. All details are enclosed in the show notes accompanying this episode. Yeah. You mentioned obviously the mining industry, and you said that obviously, and I totally agree with you, the mining industry always does things because they've always been done in the past, and they're reluctant to change. Is there anything in the mining industry that you clearly think needs to change, but it hasn't changed because it's always been done that way? Is there any major frustrations that you have with our industry because they're reluctant to change and do something different because they've been doing it for decades and maybe hundreds of years?
Change is coming, Rob, and there's a lot of effort being put into it. But I think it's the sensitivity to the environment and maybe an even greater sensitivity to the perception of the public. The industry, I think, needs to spend a lot more time showing the public that the work that's being done today is much more environmentally sensitive, and there are numerous examples of excellent reclamation programs, but the public has this deep-rooted belief that mining is very detrimental to the environment and to the communities around it. And we have to go out and try to change that perception through showing the public that we're not like the legacy image the public has in their mind of mining. The historical legacy no longer applies. There are moments when we do have some unfortunate disasters that seems to reinforce that negative perception. But I believe the industry should be going out to all of the organizations that service the industry, such as recruiting, such as lawyers, accountants, investment bankers, service providers, and saying, look, these groups all work closely with the mining industry, all depend to some degree on, or all of their revenue is dependent on the mining industry. And we need more spokespersons going out and talking about the positive developments. Also, in the educational system, we need to help people appreciate from kindergarten through adulthood that we're moving into an era where metal is a very integral part of our modern civilization, and without it, we would go backwards in time in terms of standard of living, and that mining can be done in a responsible manner, is being done in a responsible manner today, and that needs to be highlighted, and having these other groups that are to some or 100% degree dependent on our industry need to be talking about the positive side of the industry.
Yeah. And hopefully this is the reason why I do these podcasts is to try and educate not just people within our mining industry, but people outside of the mining industry, and educate them what mining is all about. So hopefully I'm contributing a little bit by obviously producing these podcasts. So I wonder if you can just give us a snapshot of McEwen Mining. Obviously, a lot of our audience are from North America, so they would know you, but we've got a lot of audience across the world. I wonder if you can give us a snapshot of McEwen Mining.
Certainly. McEwen Mining is a public company listed on the New York and Toronto Stock Exchange. Our market cap is around just under 500 million US. We have gold and silver mines in Canada, the United States, one in care and maintenance in Mexico, and a joint venture in southern Argentina. In addition to that, and we produced about 130,000 ounces of gold equivalent right last year, and this year we'll be doing about the same. We also have a large copper project, and it's in a subsidiary called McEwen Copper, which we plan to take public later this year once we have the feasibility done. McEwen Copper has a very large copper deposit in Argentina on the border with Chile, 37.6 billion pounds of copper. It's considered the 8th largest undeveloped copper deposit in the world, 37.6 billion pounds, as I said. And based on the preliminary economic assessments, we are looking at cash cost, C1 cost of $1.02 a pound, and an all-in sustaining cost of $1.58 a pound. If I put it on a gold equivalent basis, and I arrive at that by taking the gold price, dividing it by the copper price, and the product is the number of pounds of copper that is equal to the value of 1 ounce of gold, this deposit would be equivalent to about a 60 million ounce gold deposit, producing gold at under $650 an ounce, all in sustaining under $1,100 an ounce, producing a gold equivalent of over 600,000 ounces a year for 27 years, with a $3.5 billion capex, a payback in 3 years to using 375 copper. The 27 years is mining only less than 40% of the resource that we've outlined in our drilling. So it's a low cost, long life, large copper deposit of which we own 46%, and we've raised privately for it in the last 2 years a little over $450 million to advance the project. As I said, we have the environmental permit in hand and the feasibility study we expect in April of this year, and doing an IPO thereafter. So we expect the value of it, the market reception, to be good, and that value will be reflected in the value of McEwen Mining. Currently, based on the last financing of McEwen Copper, McEwen Mining's interest in that on a per share basis is greater than what we're trading at right now. So you get the gold mines for free, production, and we have a portfolio of 5 royalties, 1 on the copper project, 1 on another copper project in Nevada, and 1 in Argentina and 2 in Nevada. They're all non-producing, but I can say the copper at 375, 27-year life, would be generating over $400 million over the term of that 27 years. So I think we have quite a bit of value behind McEwen Copper. We're also big advocates of exploration and can see growth both in our Nevada property and in our properties in northern Canada next to our producing gold mines.
Obviously, you've been involved in a number of mining ventures, obviously including the development of Goldcorp. How did your experience in those shape your approach to take McEwen Mining and build it to what it is today?
I'm a big believer that management, and particularly the CEO, should have a large investment in their company. So I just think the heads should have that alignment with shareholder interest. So as I said earlier on, my investment in McEwen Mining and McEwen Copper, my personal investment, is $225 million. So that alignment, I think, is important because you focus on the share price. and how do you build value behind it. And you're not just riding on options that have been granted to you, but you've committed hard dollars, after-tax dollars, to align your interests with that of the shareholders. Whenever I look at someone coming in pitching me a story, I want to know how much money they've committed to it. Do they have $2 in it, or do they have multiple $1 million in it? Like, how much are they really committed to this story? Then you just look at the market cycle. Where are we? I happen to think right now is an excellent time to be building positions in junior companies, because I think the junior companies are going to have a bigger run than the seniors they have in the past when you get into a gold market, and I believe we're heading into a gold market. So I'd say right now is a time for building your portfolios in promising juniors. You also want to look at today, certainly in North America, it's become more difficult to permit mines, taking longer. Now that might change with Trump getting in, becoming the president of the United States, and that type of influence might extend to other countries. We're seeing it happening in Argentina, positive developments there with the government. We're seeing it in Ecuador, El Salvador. Hopefully we'll see it in Canada. We're going to have a change of government soon, finally. But are you close to roads? Are you close to available labor pools, talented labor pools? Is there power coming in? Is it already permitted? All of those go to make a much more attractive investment opportunity for me.
Obviously, you've mentioned that the company operates across a few different countries, including obviously Canada, US, Argentina. How do you manage the geopolitical risks and challenges that obviously come operating in those obviously different jurisdictions?
You need to develop, and most mining companies are doing that, develop good links with the local government so you get a heads up if something's coming down the road, and with the communities you're operating in. You can't go down any place and just expect it's like operating at home. There's much heavier commitment of time to deal with federal and local government issues and communities. Sometimes you get it wrong. Right now we're seeing Argentina has a new pro-business government. Looks like the US is going to have a pro-business government. Canada hasn't been pro-business for some time, but we just had our prime minister say he's resigning, finally. So we might see a positive change there. There are some places in the world where it just seems the type of energy you have to put in is not worth the investment of time. So stay away from it. There's no hard and fast rules. It's just some people have made, I'd say very few, but some individuals have made a habit of stepping in to environments that no one wants to step into and doing very well. So they're the contrarian, and they've been rewarded for doing that. There are other locations that are easier, so that's where I've been sticking to.
Yeah. Obviously, the company being focused on building a portfolio of obviously precious metal assets. How do you prioritize the acquisition of new projects, and what sort of criteria do you look for in potential assets? And I think obviously you've just mentioned jurisdiction risk is obviously one of them.
Well, McEwen Mining hasn't done a lot of investments. We just bought a junior in Nevada that's close to our existing operations. We haven't had the balance sheet to look at some other investments. I personally have invested in many juniors because my bank account was bigger than the company's bank account. And there I looked for, insider investment, location? Is there a novel or reinterpreted view of the opportunity, the geology? Is it in countries I'm comfortable with? The market cycle, is it a time when everybody's ignoring the sector? Is there some catalyst that the company has that looks like it will cause a positive reaction in the marketplace? It's very subjective. I don't have one hard and fast rule. I have multiples that I look at and say, how does this feel to me? Does it look like it has a chance to run? Has it been ignored by the market? And will that disappear at some point? I recall there was a company, it came in and they asked if I'd invest in it. I tried to buy the property earlier when I was running Goldcorp. They had a listing on the American Exchange and on the Toronto Exchange. They didn't trade. Their volume on the American Exchange was very low. They had one property. In that case, I sold them properties in Nevada and around, which was a big gold producing state. And also I sold them 500,000 acres that surrounded a new high-grade mine in Alaska. And I gave them some money and said, now you're in the Red Lake District, which is a high-grade district in Canada. You're in Nevada. You're in Australia. You should start marketing and building the volume on your American stock exchange. That's where there is a larger market. They did that and met with a great deal of success. So if you can change the shape of companies, I would buy 10 to 30% of juniors. And I said, I don't want to be on your board, but I want a veto on major acquisitions, divestitures, joint ventures, because some of these guys don't seem to do math very well. And I want to call on financing when you need to do financing. Sometimes just a little bit of guidance can help them get better exposure in the market and highlight what they have.
Yeah. Obviously, you're predominantly in gold, and you mentioned looking at assets that are potentially unloved and not, I suppose, known. Have you looked at the silver market at all? Because over obviously many years, the silver's probably been undervalued as well, and it is a probably commodity that's not just monetary, but also obviously used in the electrification. Have you looked at any sort of silver assets?
We produce silver in our mine in our joint venture in Argentina, and the mine in Mexico, care and maintenance, we produce, there's silver there as well. Answer your question, no, I haven't really looked at it closely. Personally, I've invested in silver bullion and gold bullion, but I haven't spent a lot of time investing in silver stocks, although I think that's an area that one should have some exposure to as well.
Yeah. How do you see the mining industry evolving over the next sort of decade in terms of public perception and technology advancements? And obviously, you mentioned that's one of the challenges that the industry does need to face head on to change the perception. How, I suppose, how do you see it advancing over the next decade?
Well, as you said, addressing that perception is one of the key objectives the industry should have, and just showing that its record is much better, its recent record is much better than a historical record. It's certainly in North America, there is an acute labor shortage, and that's largely the result of the negative impression the public holds of mining. So there's been a precipitous drop in enrollment in schools related to mining engineering, geology. And it hasn't been an industry that a lot of people want to go into. So as a result, we're seeing a tight labor supply. Turnover, certainly in North America, certain areas is high. And I see a day where automation, robotics, AI are going to play an ever-increasing role in the industry, particularly to address this labor shortage issue. I would see the mining industry, as it does that, will be more a more attractive career path for a growing number of people with those technical skills.
Yeah. Moving just outside of mining, obviously, you've got a track record of philanthropy, is obviously inspiring. I just wondering if you can just talk about the importance of obviously encouraging excellence and innovation in healthcare and education that obviously you're involved with.
Sure. The mining industry, as you said, has been very good to me. And I think there are a lot of social needs that are going unfulfilled. And maybe we look at how do we address the problem differently. One area that attracted my wife and I was in medicine. We funded an establishment of a research institute that would focus on regenerative medicine and stem cell research back in 2003. And it's grown significantly, attracted support of a number of groups, the NIH out of the US, the Bayer Pharmaceutical out of Germany, and looking at stem cell research and saying this holds out the profound promise of altering the delivery of healthcare, reducing the cost, improving the recovery times. And to us, that seemed like a very good place, not only for improving the health of our fellow Canadians, but producing research that would have application and benefit the world as a whole. And right now, one of the key projects is they've been able to inject stem cells into scar tissue in a heart that when the heart there's a heart attack, creates scar tissue, and the heart is a pump, and that scar tissue makes the pump less efficient. And they're injecting stem cells into the scar tissue, and it's growing muscle tissue where there was scar tissue. So it's improving the functionality of the heart, trying to get it back to its original state. And that the implications are it would do away with artificial heart transplants, and it would change one of the biggest problems in medicine right now is dealing with heart attacks, is to do away with artificial hearts or organ transplants. So that's one of them. The other is type 1 diabetes. There are several other areas. Human trials on the heart I believe, will be starting in the next year and a half. Diabetes is in the next year. And right now they're dealing with Parkinson's work. So lots of areas of excitement. And so if we can share some of the bounty that Mother Nature has granted us from the earth and spread it amongst all of us on surface, it's better. There's also leadership and entrepreneur programs for high school boys and girls, trying to address the problem of creating better leaders, more confident entrepreneurs to add to our society. And it's just, there's some cultural as well, but just looking at where we see needs or areas that could use support, happy to contribute to it and try to make an impression that has an impact.
Yeah, no, good to hear. The interests of obviously management and shareholders are squarely aligned with obviously McEwen Mining. How does maintaining such a large personal investment impact your leadership approach?
Well, you definitely can't go to sleep and forget about it. It keeps you focused on what is important. It's not the salary, it's not the title. It's all about building the value of what you've invested. And there are times along the way where it doesn't go the way you hoped it to go, but it keeps bringing you back to center and saying, this is where you're going. This is where you want to go. This is what you want to create and achieve. So it keeps you aligned with why you're in a public company.
Yeah. I've got 3 more questions. If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, obviously related to the mining industry, what would that be?
One piece of advice. I say go for it quicker, be more passionate than the past, commit earlier. There's lots of opportunity out there, but you want to do it. You don't want to wait. Just get on with it. Do it.
Yeah. And would you include, how much risk would you include in that? Would you say be pretty risky or risk adverse, but still go for it?
I guess I don't like following the crowd, and I don't like standing in line. I'll step out of line and give you, for instance, if you want to go from A to B and there are people standing in line, you could get behind the last person in the line, and if they're not moving that quickly, you could give them a little nudge. And they might lean on the person in front of them, but very quickly that nudge gets diluted and has no impact as it goes up the line. So what I found for me, my best success was stepping out of line, and every once in a while I can see where I want to go to, because when I stood in line, there's always someone taller than me in front of me. So I can't see where I'm going. I'm dependent on how quickly they move and the line in front of them moves. Whereas I step out of line, I can follow my own path. It goes up and down, and you're over hills and in valleys, but you're moving in that direction and you can see your target more frequently. And I found that I've usually arrived at that destination well ahead of who I would have stood behind. So advice is, I would say, step out of line when you have the opportunity and get a clearer shot at where you want to go, and do it passionately.
How do you stay motivated? Obviously, being in the mining industry for such a long time, and what keeps you excited about the future of McEwen Mining and the broader mining sector?
It's easy. The excitement of being involved in making a discovery, and what flows out of that. The mining industry has provided me with gains that I can redeploy into areas, as we talked about earlier on, where I think we can support improvements to our standard of living, whether it be in healthcare and leadership, cultural endeavors. I just think there are many more discoveries to be made, and I want to be part of that.
And lastly, what are some of the biggest opportunities and challenges for McEwen Mining you're facing in the near future, and how are you preparing for them?
One would be making sure that our gold operations are consistent in terms of their performance. We're still not where I want them to be. 2 would be updating it, embracing more technologies to make the operation more efficient, to speed up the process of going from exploring to getting some drill holes to getting a resource estimate to putting it into production. How do we encourage the government to move faster? Can we aid them with artificial intelligence to speed up the permitting? Can we get out there and work harder at changing the public's negative perception into a positive one? And certainly our copper project really excites me because it's a very different model for mining. It's a large project, and 2.5 years ago, I brought an architect in to sit down with our engineers, our management team, our consultants, and help us redefine and transform the image of mining in the mind of the public. Now, this architect is considered the Steve Jobs of the green living building space, and the designs and concepts he's come up with, by many people's perception, are revolutionary to mining. But I think it is one of the models that the mining industry could go forward with to do that very important change in public perception. So we're looking at a mine. As I said, it's going to be a big mine. All of the power, it's going to be electrically powered, and that electricity, we have the largest power company in Argentina saying they will provide us with 100% renewable source electricity. We're looking at a fleet. So all of our process, all the electricity on site would be from renewable sources. Our fleet, we hope to have electric. So our carbon footprint is very, very small. And be compared to a comparable size mine, it would be 1/10 the carbon emissions. And we're looking by 2038 to be net zero. In terms of water usage, again, compared to a comparable size mine, conventional mine, it'll be using less than 1/4 the water. In terms, it won't have any tailings dam. We'll be using a heap leach process that doesn't produce tailings, and we'll be producing a copper cathode on site rather than having to ship concentrate off to a smelter and then to the ultimate market when it's been refined. And then the architecture, we're looking at creating a zone for our employees that is safe and secure and peaceful. So if you can just imagine for a moment, this architect has picked up the concepts from the Incas of terracing the mountainside. Now it's terraced but enclosed in a glass vessel that's about 3 football fields long, with hanging gardens. It's treating its own water, growing a lot of its own produce, cutting out transportation issues for that. And it's really quite a sight to see. I'll send you a copy of a 5-minute video, Rob, that will give you a very good impression of what we're up to. But it's very exciting.
Yeah, please.
To be part of that new model.
Yeah. Rob, really appreciate you your time, taking out your busy day to do this podcast, sharing your journey, your career, providing your thoughts on the mining industry, give us an overview of McEwen Mining and what you're looking to achieve, and obviously hopefully providing some content that to our listeners that will hopefully help them in their own careers and developing their own mining companies. So really appreciate your your time. If our audience wants to follow the McEwen story, how can they go about doing that? Do you go out on social media at all and showcase what you're doing?
You visit our website, McEwenmining.com. I guess on that site there's some speeches I've given, but I don't use a lot of the social media. I think some of our investor relations people do, but I'm not that active on the sites.
Yeah, no worries. We'll put that on the website on our show notes so people can easy access and follow the story. Rob, all the best for the future. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully I'll see you at PDAC this coming year, and wish you all well for obviously the mining operations and obviously this copper project. So wish you well in the future.
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
25.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes, especially this episode, our 500th. Thank you for listening. And until next time, happy mining.
Happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.